Hey everybody, it's me, Greg Spiro, and we will be starting momentarily. We've got a very special show for you today with Bryce Rosenblum, Mike Bindraban, and Simon Rentner. We're going to be talking about the state of the touring industry and a lot of things that are changing for artists, so stick around. We'll be here at 8 o'clock. Hey guys, Greg Spiro here. For those of you who just missed it on the other pages, we're live on the Facebook page and actually a bunch of pages right now. I just want to let you know we've got some very special guests this morning, including Bryce Rosenblum, founder of Winter Jazz Fest, and Mike Bindraban, founder of Good Music Company. We're going to talk about touring and the landscape that artists are dealing with right now in this crazy COVID economy that we're facing. So stick around. We've got great conversation for you starting in about 5 minutes. Bye. That was fun. All right, I'm trying not to be late this morning because we've got a very special show for you today. Oh wow, my camera's out of focus. That's okay because it's not going to be a very performance-oriented show today. We've got some amazing special guests that we're going to have on, including Mike Binderban, founder of Good Music Company, who I've done many a tour with them, with the awesome Mackay McCraven, my hometown homie from Chicago, and Bryce Rosenblum, founder of Winter Jazz Fest. They're making a lot of interesting changes and adaptations, as we all have to this new economy. So I'm going to get to them real quick today. But first, I just want to welcome you here to Mornings with Greg. I feel like I need a theme song or something. We got Mark Carey on. I see some friends logging on already. Thank you to Good Music and Winter Jazz Fest for cross-posting this. I do this at 8 a.m. every single morning. And today's a very special morning because it is 4/20/20. We will never see another one of these in our lifetime, so I'd like to celebrate with you all. I won't right now. But also I just want to feature my cousin's cannabis company that he just released 2 days ago, called Drew Martin. You can pick it up in Los Angeles at various shops. And I'm sure there are going to be a lot of great pranks, a lot of great celebrations today, but we're not going to really get into that because there are more important things to talk about than the pleasures in which we can indulge, which is how we can adapt to this very, the disaster that we are in right now. It is a disaster. It's one of those once-in-a-lifetime things, a global pandemic that is taking out a lot of people. I've had some friends that it's taken out already. By the way, we've got a chat thing here on the, hey, what's up, Kevin Hayden? We've got a chat on the left here where you can see what people are saying. I don't know if it's grabbing it from the cross-posted pages, but it's definitely grabbing it from my personal Facebook page. But without further ado, let's see if the guys are on the line here on Zoom. It looks like they are. Well, everyone except for Simon so far. So we're gonna have we're gonna bring these guys in, and then we'll see if maybe Simon has texted me. Maybe. All right. Well, you know what? I'm gonna start this conversation, and then I'll grab Simon in. So going to the guest portal here, and we're gonna say admit and admit, and we're gonna welcome Bryce Rosenblum. There's Simon. Bryce Rosenblum, Mike Bindraban, and Simon Rentner into our new little virtual panel. How's it going, guys? It's kind of cool that we can do something like this now in this
hey, everyone.
Wild environment.
Hey, what's up, y'all? I got my coffee. I think I'm ready now. Good. I know you guys are like already midday. You're already having your midday cocktail. I understand.
Right.
5 p.m. over here, Simon.
Wow, 5 p.m.
Exactly.
Yeah, it's 11 a.m. in New York.
Everybody? How's everybody doing?
Hey guys.
So we're just here talking about the state of the music industry as we're confronted with this COVID-19 crisis. We got Mike from Good Music Company in the Netherlands. We got Bryce from Winter Jazz Fest. We got Mornings with Greg in LA, the pianist, touring musician, sort of representing 4 sectors of the music industry as we know it, and how we are all dealing with the crisis in front of us. What's up, everybody? Good morning.
Good morning.
Good morning to all the people all over the world. You know, I actually ran out of my mushroom cocoa that I usually have during the show. Have you guys ever tried? It's like got reishi mushroom in it. Reishi mushroom, not the crazy kind. Yeah, but I usually have it every morning when I'm doing the show. It's very relaxing, you know. But I ran out of it this morning, so I had to use like this mix of different it's like a different mix of mushroom powder that I have along with MCT powder to give it the cocoa flavor. So we'll see how this turns out. If I get kind of loopy in the conversation, I apologize in advance.
You'll have to send us a mix.
Are these the mushrooms that improve your memory?
They're supposed to. Yeah, well, so the reishi mushroom improves your nerves. The lion's mane mushroom improves your memory. And I notoriously have a terrible memory, and since I started drinking this every day, I feel like it's improved. And
I've been taking lion's mane fungus too for my brain. I think it's working. I need it I have a terrible memory as well. Bryce knows.
I forget what you're saying. I don't remember that you're talking about.
All right, so I just want to start the conversation out by asking you all, what's the most alarming thing that you've heard from musicians? What's the worst possible outcome that you hear, and what do you think is the best possible outcome from this? Let's start from there.
Wow.
I mean, the worst is we're not going to understand, or we're not going to know how long this will last and how this is really going to affect the overall culture that we're living in. Everything from social distancing restrictions, which affects the live side of the music tremendously. When restrictions are going to be lifted in terms of having any sort of large scale assembly, and then the overall behavior of the society, because we're going to be filled with anxiety and we're all going to become germaphobes, and anyway, that's definitely.
We're all going to be become New York style hypochondriacs. Is that what you're saying?
Yeah, basically.
I have a history of hypochondriacs in my family, and I've generally been one, coming from just like North Shore Jewish family outside of Chicago. We tend to be very careful about germs. Maybe it's because of our history, but I feel like everybody's sort of adapting to our mentality now, which is, reassuring in a way.
The emergency Purell in your back pocket.
Oh yeah,
that was a staple before this came down.
Yeah, exactly. But
oh my God, we just there's been that Purell shortage. This was crazy. Over the weekend, I finally went through all the bins from Winter Jazz Fest. Mm-hmm. We have a dozen different bins that have everything from paper clips and clipboards and paper and envelopes and counters, and they have these little bottles of Purell. So I just found a dozen little bottles of Purell that I didn't remember we had.
Nice.
Oh my gosh.
Anyway,
golden.
Yeah, that is.
What a find.
We were already stocked up. We had this stuff for years.
I'm not here.
Well,
no.
So what are you guys all listening to right now? I know we wanted to start this conversation on a positive note too. What's the music that's inspiring everybody right now?
I've been really enjoying the mornings with Desron Douglas and Brandy Younger.
Yes.
Really, really lovely way to start the day. Beautiful and fun. You know, they have such great candor.
I think they do that every Friday, right?
Yep.
It's like a Friday brunch. I remember because I thought it was Sunday because brunch just notoriously is on Sundays, and I wanted to listen to it on a Sunday, and then I was like, oh no, actually they're doing it every Friday. So if you want to have a Friday brunch, you should check them out. It's on their pages. I've been enjoying that too.
That's right.
I've been
There's
actually
something about the heart.
reggae. A lot of old reggae, some old school dubs, some Gregory Isaacs and Peter Tosh, and I don't know, keeps me uplifted somehow.
That's nice. You know what I've been listening to every morning has been Mozart. I've been getting into a lot more classical music. I think maybe because it's so calming and symmetrical, it just puts your brain into this sort of centered place.
You mean Mozart the trumpet player, right?
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Funny. You could have been serious. There could easily be. There was somebody. There was a sax player who called himself Michael Jackson. I think he still does. You know, it's like, call yourself Mike, man. Call yourself Mike Jackson. But yeah, not the trumpet player Mozart, the composer Mozart. I've been listening to that every morning, and then also getting into more any meditative music, like the Colm concert. Simon, you and I discussed that on a previous show. That's been one of my go-tos. I've been listening to that over and over.
Yeah, so what I'm about to release this podcast in conjunction with Fabian Almazan's Biophilia Festival that he's launching. And what's really interesting about it is he's releasing this duo Endless Field, which is basically guitar and double bass. These guys went out into endangered southern Utah, into the wilderness, and lugged all of their gear, insane amounts of gear with them, including a double bass, and recorded themselves in canyons and next to waterfalls and rivers and in the forest and with bees stinging them and like in the elements ultimately. And it really got me actually thinking too that it was just such a timely release for this project on Earth Day, which is celebrating its 50th anniversary, but only because it sort of reflects our mind, which is sort of, at least adjacently on the issues revolving around global warming, because industry is on pause period. And, we're slowing emissions at the very least. Mm-hmm. And then also there's just a natural, organic social distancing taking place when you see, an artist performing by themselves in a canyon. And so it's sort of like coming together, like all of these interesting, timely things. And it got me thinking, like, maybe all of these issues, including the environmental issues that we're facing now, too, are directly in line with the pandemic. And it got me thinking, at least from a media point of view, like, how can we support artists by doing super dope videos, maybe with them in nature or in spaces, by commissioning artists to perform, say, on the top of Tabletop Mountain in Cape Town, or some rainforest in the Amazon, or wherever. You're not only bringing attention to the space, but you're bringing attention to the artist and the musician in a safe place. And it could be all like under this larger banner of like Save the Earth music series. I know it's kind of like grandiose, but I feel like it checks a lot of boxes. What do you guys think?
Great idea. We have 2 days to put it together, right?
Yeah, there you go.
Earth Day is in 2 days, right? The 22nd. So let's put it together.
But I feel like, how about for all of you? I feel like all of our brains are probably working overtime to think of creative solutions to deal with this that could provide either funding opportunities, or in this case, potentially underwriting opportunities to fund a video project like this, and that could also support musicians and et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. What kinds of creative solutions are you guys thinking about in terms of dealing with this in the short term?
Well, I want to step back and just point out one thing about everything that you just said, is that first of all, the Earth is happier now than it's been in a long time, which is a weird dichotomy, right? For every Like it's one of the maybe silver linings of everything that we're going through now. There are the hole in the ozone layer is gradually closing itself back up, I heard, and I look out over the LA skyline and I've never seen it this clear without the smog. And it's causing us as human beings, as a human race, to come sort of back into ourselves and hopefully self-reflect on what we are doing as a human race to the mother that is sustaining us all. So we can see the dichotomy of when we're really just going at it, like not thinking about it, and then when we have to take a step back and be meditative. So it's beautiful that it aligns with Earth Day in this way, and hopefully one of the silver linings that comes from this is people having an increased awareness. It sounds like that's what you're talking about, is how to amplify that increased awareness and make it sustainable.
Yeah, bring attention to places so that we know to protect them ultimately, right? Like, know that these places exist, acknowledge their existence, and don't take them for granted. It starts before you can protect something. You have to build awareness, right? It's like a multi-step process.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that's what I like about Fabian Almasan's label, the Biophilia Records. I mean, it puts the spotlight on environmentalism and on something that is, makes it, it creates an additional value to what he tries to say, and it's authentic, and it resonates a lot these times. I just wish, maybe that's maybe hard to say, but I just wish the music community or maybe musicians would have that little lining of I don't know, maybe you should say activism somehow in these times, to really, to really propel or be the instrument of change, be it on the environmental side, like Simon and Greg just referred, or be it more political, because you guys over there in the U.S. are in pretty bad shape when it comes to politics.
It's been rough.
Yeah, so it's actually maybe touches on a broader question. Like is music still, and in what way can music actually make a change to propel ourselves forward in these times?
Well, that's what it's been throughout history, right? Like that's. And I agree with you. It's time for us to step up. Throughout history, you see like the Joni Mitchells and the Bob Marleys and the people who've taken a stance on a specific thing and made that the center of their musical universe, and they become icons representing an idea, and then that idea can spread throughout people, and it's stronger. Music has the power to connect people and bring people together in that way more than anything else.
So how can musicians...
Let's look a little closer to home with Billie Holiday and Nina Simone, people in our framework, and others, Ellington even. It's time to bring that spirit, bring that leadership back, in the fold of the jazz community. We do have a voice. We do have a very cautious audience. Who I think is willing to listen and change behavior. I love, actually, just going back real quickly to Biophilia and Fabian Almasan, I love just the little things he's asking us to do. Be sensitive about turning off a light when you're not in the room, or just the little things you can do around your house to make a difference. But yes, we want ideally to think bigger and broader, beyond just environmentalism, but what we can do, each of us, to amplify appropriate voices that are already asking for a change, and that's what inspires me is finding the artist who's taking those steps and being able to amplify.
So, do you think, Bryce, that should be? Do you think they should be more explicit in that to create the more societal value of?
Absolutely. I think they should. I think it'll, from history, it resonates strongly. I don't think there's a risk at all of compromising someone's artistic integrity. I mean, yes, of course, some people prefer just to play the music and let the music speak for itself, but I don't think we can sit by anymore and just rely on that feel good to save us. I do think explicitly the message should be front and center.
Yeah, people need to stand up for what they believe in. Like a lot of the times, I see my peers sort of allowing their voice to be softened because of fear of offending people, because people are so polarized on these sides of the equation in the world right now. People don't want to destroy their access to a certain audience, but I think now more than ever it's important that we educate ourselves and form a very solid opinion on what we think should be happening in this world, and then use our power as artists to portray that message and to encourage other people to do the things that will allow those people to first educate themselves and form their own opinions to move the world in the direction that it needs to be moved, because we do need some change.
Is that happening enough, you guys think, right now? I mean, online, everybody's, doing their own online concerts. Their bigger artists do bedroom concerts, they ask a little fee. And I question myself, does that fee go to their crew who is now unemployed and, especially in the States without healthcare? What kind of, how can artists, how can our community come together actually to really make a statement? And it should be generic. I mean, everybody has the right to their own opinion, obviously, but just to come together at some point.
Yeah,
and I'm feeling I'm missing that a little bit.
Well, it happened last night a little bit, or 2 nights ago maybe. Sorry, you go on. Then I'll talk about that.
No, I just feel like in our hyper-capitalistic, social Darwinistic environment like New York, especially, which is always encourages people to compete against each other, there isn't this natural collaborative even mindset. It's we're always talking about ownership of who's doing what for them from even a media standpoint, like who owns this product, where is it going to live? And just there's these, so that we're already thinking about it in these terms divisively rather than collaboratively. Like it's this ecosystem that we're all living in, and we all have to find a space where we can all thrive. And quite frankly, like there is strength in numbers. And if you even look at it in terms of like something as simple as like the cross-posting tool in Facebook, which really like kind of, just from a technical point of view, blurs those lines of who's owning this product ultimately, and who is consuming it. But I think it's like a kind of, not to give Facebook too much credit, but I mean, I think at least that kind of device helps us think about ways in which a Bryce and a Mike and a Simon and a Greg can come together more efficiently and elegantly to create models that could really make a huge impact somewhere.
Well, the ideas,
that's where I'm thinking.
The ideas that you bring up an interesting point, which is the ideas themselves are universal and can't be owned by anybody because of the nature of ideas. The right to media content can be owned. And that's a big question now, and something that I'm excited to hear about from Mike and Bryce is now the big asset that can be scarce is media that is valued, right? So we need
because let me just say from a personal experience too, like there's some artists out there that have extremely like potent fan bases, and they're going to continue to support them regardless, whether it's through their Patreon page, whether it's through, whatever. Like, and the fact of the matter is people are going to pay money to keep them doing what they're doing. And so when you look at it that way, there is never going to be an oversaturation because people are so devoted to these individual artists that there's going to be some kind of support there. So then the idea is, okay, those artists that I know in my mind that I will not name are printing money right now. And straight up, like there's some artists out there that are doing very well for themselves. Like how do we like basically cultivate that collectively and create an excitement to where for instance, I have visions of wanting to build a Live from Our Living Rooms version 2, version 3. What's the next installment of the next virtual jazz festival, and how dope is it going to be, and how fast can we get it off the ground? Like straight up, like
yeah. This is something I've been thinking about a lot. Of course, Winter Jazz Fest is not until January, and a couple weeks ago, I was confident that there's going to be no problem. Of course, we're going to be able to do Winter Jazz Fest, but every week that goes by, I'm a little bit more in doubt about that. I don't know if you heard the mayor of New Orleans said that they don't want any large public gathering events until or through the end of this year. Mayor de Blasio just said large concerts are going to be the last things that are going to be where the restrictions are going to be lifted. Even if we start loosening the restrictions by towards the end of the year and allow smaller numbers of assembly, it's clear that the kind of experience of a Winter Jazz Fest where we're operating in 12 venues across Brooklyn and Manhattan throughout an entire week, we're not going to be able to do it the same way we've done it the last 16 years. There are going to be restrictions. We may not even be able to do it at all. So I'm already thinking, well, if we have this platform, virtual performances, can we create or use that as an opportunity where instead of 12 venues in Manhattan and Brooklyn, we have 12 venues or 22 venues across the world. So we're in Amsterdam and Paris and Cape Town and LA and New York and all over. And there's different channels. Anyway, there's lots of opportunity, I think, that can bring us together. It's about pooling resources, creating a collective shared vision, and creating an event for our jazz community. I think that is an incredible opportunity. At the end of the day, we'll reach more than the several thousand people that we can reach in a single night at a Winter Jazz Fest or another jazz festival. We can reach thousands more. So that's something I'm seriously thinking about. I'd love Mike to be a partner. I'd love a lot of other colleagues, presenter colleagues, to be partners as well.
It's a very interesting idea. Are you talking about, when you say stages, an actual venue that is set up for live streaming that maybe has a small or no audience, and then the artists come to that venue and broadcast from that venue?
I mean, at this point, I think it's that would be a safe solution. I believe we're going to be moving in that direction where the restrictions will be lifted, so you'll be able to have a number of people within a space. You can have a band on stage and stream it to thousands more. In an ideal scenario, I don't think we're going to be at a place where we can have even 3/4 or half the capacity in like a Bowery Ballroom or an LPR.
Let me pose another idea, and this is no disrespect to the actual venues that I love and adore and support and donate money to, even in these times of crisis. But in these, especially because we're talking about times of experimentation, and if we're relying upon tickets to be sold, let's just say practically, to be donate in some maybe either form of donation or purchasing it online to get access to whatever it is that you're watching, you're automatically able to cut out venues in a certain sense to bring that product directly to audiences and fans. I'm not saying that's we're all in this ecosystem together.
You're also cutting out the agents and the managers, unfortunately, right now. That's another piece.
That's why we're talking about this.
Right, that we have to figure out how we can support everyone.
Exactly.
There's also, journalists and photographers are hurting right now.
Exactly.
Everyone, all the stakeholders, all the individuals who support this community, this jazz community, this live music community, are facing new challenges. And
exactly.
I know you mentioned, Simon, there are artists, of course, that are doing well because they have a committed fan base, but there's plenty of side musicians and other musicians that don't have those same entities supporting them and that are hurting.
99% of them.
We need to figure out ways to.
Well, a nice example. A nice example maybe is like actually when the first lockdowns here in Europe started, the Norwegians basically had one of their main big jazz venues called Central in Oslo, and they did big duo concerts with kind of well-known Norwegian jazz names like Nils Petter Molvar, Matthias Eik, and everybody did their concerts, and basically it was high-end audio, high-end video. There was nobody in the room. And it was live streamed through a platform, and you could donate. And basically every night, but that's maybe the cultural engagement of the people in Norway, or maybe in some other areas. They raise around $3,000 per night, which went straight to the artist. Wow. And obviously Norway has a governmental infrastructure to fund these kinds of things. To get a beautiful venue, to get a high-end video and audio. And just referring back to what Bryce said, this crisis really hits the live sector or the music scene on all levels. It's not just us agents or managers. It's Bryce being a presenter, having to think about like, how can I make a concert solvable, either with funding or without funding with social distancing. In Holland, we have this concept now, which is called the 1.5 meter society, which basically means that our prime minister said, like, we have to take into account with the loosening of the measures that we'll need to live in a 1.5 meter society, be very cautious. And like Bryce said, the ladder of the ladder, the last of the last measures which will be loosened are events, and maybe from a healthcare perspective, rightfully so. You're putting, venues in a position now where, they need to kind of space out and think, like Bowery Ballroom, for example. Well, here it's like, I don't know, a venue like Bimhuis. I had a conversation with the Bimhuis, which is a beautiful venue for a lot of American jazz artists. A lot of them, they go through there. Their capacity is 350 seated. It's a beautiful venue, a half circle, beautiful window at the back. You can see Amsterdam over the view. But if you have to space that out to 1.5 meters, you're going to end up with 60 seats.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So that has implications on either the fee for the artist, let alone American artists or touring artists, with airlines and travel restrictions and whatever. But, it has implications on the fee. It has implications on the venue expenses because, we need to start checking people's temperature or, providing masks or whatever.
Mm-hmm.
And then, it's very hard without like some serious governmental support or a restructuring of certain fields of the economic system to actually support this. It basically lets us see, all of us, from musician, media, promoter to manager, that how fragile our sector actually is,
Mm-hmm. Well,
super fragile.
Yeah, and I want to speak to that for just a second because it's also, so there are two layers to this, right? There's the fact that our industry, I think that there's no other way to put it other than saying that it's going to be decimated right now. We're facing a moment where the status quo, the way that we made our money, from artists to managers to booking agents to venues, there's a cascading economy here, right? Where the money goes from people being in one spot and then filters out to all of these places because we made our money on touring for a long time. After the Napster, for 20 years, since recorded music got
so
lower
much
price.
is reliant on touring because artists are making very little now on from the streaming platform.
Exactly.
From how people are consuming music, sadly.
Yeah, exactly. So we're going to be it's going to be decimated, but so many other economies are decimated too, because by the nature of this. Like, I mean, look at the airline industry. I mean, personally, I think it's ridiculous the extent to which we bailed out the airline industry in the U.S. But there, even with that, it's not going to be it's not going to be sustainable even with government bailouts, because government only has so much money to put into things, and the economy was the thing that was propping it up. So the question now is, our industry is going to be, for some period of time, and I want to know, Mike, you had posted an article on like the period of time that would be, so I want you to speak to that in a little bit. But for some period of time, it's going to be completely changed, and we need to figure out how to pick up the pieces of rubble and build something, build the new the new world for artists and for venues and for promoters and that we want. Bryce, I know you're working on something specifically like that, and what you talked about before also has to do with that. But that's the big question right now. How are we going to rebuild that which has been decimated?
That's going to be...
Go ahead.
Bryce, no, you go.
No, thank you, Greg. It's definitely challenging, and we have to think creatively about how we can bring the community together, and actually, piggybacking on, what Simon said earlier, using this platform as a way to unify, and there's definitely opportunity. One thing that I'm doing with a couple team members, we're launching the Jazz Coalition. The site will be up soon. You can go to jazzcoalition.org to sign up for more information. But there's really 3 priorities for the Jazz Coalition. One is to bring everyone together, unify all stakeholders of the industry. So presenters, radio, artists, managers, agents, journalists, and just general supporters and serious fans to come together, join Jazz Coalition. We are creating a commissioning program. So we're raising money, and we're going to be awarding $1,000 commission grants to artists, deserving artists, to create new work. And the third component is really to use all this to build morale, build collective morale in the community. And we're going to be supporting artists that we really feel are in need of these commission grants. So it's not necessarily the super affluent artist, the artist that's very successful already. It's not necessarily the artist who already has a full-time faculty gig at a university, but the touring artist, the side player. We want to build morale and help create new work in this time.
Well, that's a big opportunity, right? To the creation of new works by talented people who may not have been in the spotlight yet. Because in this flattening of the whole landscape, now everybody has the same access to media, essentially. And the world was kind of going in that way with the release of streaming music and the taking away of the gatekeepers and all of that. But now it's really like anybody can. I mean, I started this show when I started quarantining because I wanted to, and people are watching. It's not something that I could have done when people weren't paying attention to this sort of media. And I think that creating new works and funding new works could be a big part of the path forward. Thinking about how
I'll bring a huge, massive lawsuit to Google and YouTube, and to first disrupt the streaming, beast that's consuming everybody right now. And now that inequity is on Microsoft. So maybe through Bryce's Jazz Coalition, we can create a massive worldwide boycott against these monsters.
You don't even need a boycott, Simon. All you need to do is stream it on a platform that's based in blockchain technology. Those are being developed. They're not finished yet, but people are working on. And in fact, this is something that Louis Marks, the founder of Rope-a-Dope Records, and I have been talking about for years. Was the fact that blockchain technology is there now to put the power of media into the hands of the people, and there are systems being developed that will allow people to do things like this, not through YouTube. I mean, you can already do it through other sites that aren't as big as YouTube, but something that's truly not proprietary, something that truly belongs to the person who's creating. And once that exists and we all can hop on that as artists, as long as we can get the people with the attention to hop on that, it's so empowering to the artist. We have control over where the people
How long away are we from that, though, Greg? In a timeline, where do you see this is actually an opportunity for artists to put their music up on?
Well, that I don't know. That I'm not. I'm not a technological expert in that field. So I don't know how far away we are from having an actual blockchain source thing. But if anybody watching does know about that field, I know there are some very smart people watching right now. I'll post in the comments and the follow-up show notes what I find in that vein, because that is important. The question of how can we as artists take back the power that we have over the eyeballs that are watching us, and not just hand it to an entity like YouTube. so that we can do things like, Bryce, what you're talking about, and create a concert series that, I mean, right now, if you created that, it would make more sense for you to go to YouTube. It would be great if it would make more sense for you to be on a proprietary platform where you had true control about the monetization of it and the distribution of it, wouldn't it?
But those venues are already there. You know, I mean, it's more or less how are we implementing that infrastructure? How are we using that infrastructure? And is it broadly accepted as added value for a musician or his music? You know, I mean, Bandcamp is a great example of that. You know, you don't have to put up your music on Spotify and on streaming and on YouTube either. I mean, it just begs, you know, it's just more or less the overall question on how can you capitalize on video content. And that is very difficult nowadays. And obviously, of course, we all feel that, you know, for somebody like YouTube should pay the artists and musicians much more fairly. Absolutely.
Yes, they should.
Yep. You know, and but there are other ways to really figure that out. And I feel that, you know, in a time like this, you know, especially the artist community, they need time to innovate and improve, and, you know, actually think about the more meta questions instead of these smaller questions. But the meta question is more like, how can a musician become more of added value to society right now? You know, why in making and you know, proclaiming art was a bit of my question in the start of this conversation. How music can be a chain to like activism and kind of, you know, bringing communities together and propelling change. But even for the music industry itself, it's just a matter of choices. You know, if let's say Bryce and me, we set up this winter jazz global interconnectedness, you know, and which is with streaming and everything. I mean, why shouldn't we not have a good conversation on doing it through an own platform, you know, and selling our own tickets and making sure we have a big enough network? And the question is, how can you propel that network to also be part of be part of it? And I think that's the big question also. You know, it's more or less like, how can we engage more? I find that jazzcoalition.org is a great example of some people within the industry coming together for the artist, because in all the conversations right now on economics and bailouts, and also here in Europe, also here in Holland, you know, on building out the cultural sector, working with the cultural sector, or what is the value of the cultural sector? We're building out KLM here in Holland, but we're not bailing out the cultural sector. And the cultural sector actually represents almost 4% of our GDP. So it's more or less an economic discussion instead of like this moral, cultural discussion. And, you know, people need to stand up. In this whole discussion, the artist is never mentioned. So, you know, it has to come from the artists themselves. I mean, I know Michael Leake, for example, is a big, you know, thing about Spotify, about, you know, not using Spotify, but he has to, you know, somehow. So when are the big musicians coming together and actually going to talk to Spotify and say, like, look, man, we need to change this up?
Yeah, well, it's a unionization of sorts, right? That's like, how do we come together and use the collective power that we have to do something for all of us together?
But I feel that the big fish need to pull the cart a little bit more. You know,
well, there is a petition out right now. Mark Ribot and other musicians are behind it. You know, asking for that kind of restructuring, that kind of compensation from the Spotify's and you know the streaming companies.
Yeah, or sidestep it. I mean, yes, it's great to do a petition and fight against the big dogs, but this is like, I mean, unless it's a David and Goliath story, which is unlikely, you know, we may have to like walk around Goliath and build our own system, because we're fighting against somebody who's also dealing. Sorry,
what else should we do then? What else should we do then, Greg? You know, make selfies and then make videos of ourselves playing music all day?
No, I think we come to agreement. There's going to be a point where we have to come to agreements between each other. And you're right, the big fish have to be involved, as in the artists, and we have to get the people. Right now, the problem is the biggest fish are are actually, they have their own power to unionize against places like Spotify because Spotify relies on them. So you have the Taylor Swifts of the world, you know, who are now like, after whatever fight they have, they like come to an agreement because they have the power. The problem is we're a small sector of the entertainment industry, the creative, like new, innovative music that we're all trying to push. It doesn't have the level of pull and popularity that the big dogs do. So I think that, so for example, Renew Music is it's sort of a unionization of this sort that I know Louis Marks is working on. And in fact, Bryce, I think you should definitely talk to him about this if you haven't already. Because I think
please connect us. That'd be great.
Yeah, it would align directly with what you're working on. But it's not. It is a matter of doing things like this, like streaming and accessing more people, and creating content that will engage people in addition to the art that we're creating. But it's also a question of coming together with a collective agreement of how we're going to manifest this as a music community. And then, I mean, for example, if we were able to all come to an agreement with each other under some sort of platform that we all trust, that is collectively owned, we would be able to say, okay, all of us are going to take our music and we're not going to actually put it on Spotify, and we're going to put it on this other thing, this other proprietary blockchain-based platform, because we know we'll be able to get our audience and more to go to that platform because we're all doing it together. The problem is we're fractionated. We're like, you know, divided and conquered right now.
Yeah, but the problem there is, Greg, is how are you going to get a lot of people to really change over into and get into this blockchain thing? I mean, maybe we do know a little bit what blockchain is, but even me, sometimes it's like, okay, I'm a bit lost, so I need to do my investigation, and then there's an element of trust. You know, you need to trust.
Well,
so to get to that point, that's going to take a while.
It's
the same thing like right now. You know, I mean, people are saying like, "Oh, Mike, you know, yeah, everybody's online. You should really start doing more online stuff, and maybe, you know, virtual reality is going to take off." Sure, it might be a spur for that, but we're still at the beginning of that. Mm-hmm. You know, and that's, I feel it's the same thing with the whole blockchain thing somehow. Mm-hmm. And at the same time, I'm very self-aware that, you know, just by saying this, maybe this all does not make sense because the industry is in shambles anyway. Everything is destructive.
Well, the thing is, attention is still there.
That we can do something totally new, you know?
Yeah, attention is still there, though. That's the one asset that we have. That has been the asset that artists have had for years, is the attention of the people who are paying that attention to them, right? And I don't know the answer. But I think that there is an answer if we, and we're going to have to find it because everybody's going to get more and more desperate as this time goes by without us being able to have income. And it might be an answer that takes longer than we want it to, but something that allows us to, and trust is a huge factor, like you were saying. But it's got to be something that allows us to come together to distribute the content that we're creating in a way that is not just to the benefit of a corporate entity. And I
you know, it's interesting. I used to say when I was at a pivotal point, you know, deciding which level of the industry I really wanted to dive in on just after college, and I was toying with label and radio, and I'd already had presenting experience. I was convinced, of course, that there's always, you know, the recording, that's always developing into moving in a different directions. Label side, streaming side, but I knew that live performance, the communal energy you feel when you're in a room with all your, you know,
it's unbeatable.
Right? Yeah. That's never going to change because, you know, that give and take, the live, you know, give and take from stage to the audience. But of course, now here we are, and it is changing. But the thing that remains the same is we have the artists creating the music. And we have the audience who wants to consume it, wants to be enriched by it, and fulfilled by it, and drives us. So those two entities are always going to have a relationship. And whatever, you know, we can do to help further that and connect those, you know, I'm committed. If I have to pivot a little bit again, you know, I'm happy to. But, you know, we need to, I think what we're saying here is we need to figure out a way to come together and figure out this new direction forward.
Yeah. How can musicians become more valued in society? I mean, it's a discussion we have here in Holland as well. Like, all right, so it varies from, all right, so the international touring side is not happening for the next couple of months. So should we focus more on local musicians? Should we focus on, really trying to flourish our own local music ecosystem? Be it in which country you are. There are talks within the European Jazz Network, which is a network of the jazz venues and jazz festivals across Europe, which come together, and talk policy on a whole bunch of stuff. But one of their things was like and that was an idea coming from an Austrian festival, was that you need to have minimum wages for musicians coming from your own country or from your own local market, so that you can sustain that little music community and music ecosystem. I mean, there are pros and cons, obviously, but
minimum wages coming from where?
So from the festival will have to pay the artist coming from, in a festival in Vienna. The artist comes from Vienna. He has to have a minimum of 1,500 euros.
Yeah, but what about now when the festival can't even bring people? That's the question, right?
I mean, no, but this is the thing, I mean, for Europe at least, you have a distinction within like heavy subsidized festivals, very arts oriented festivals versus kind of commercial festivals like North stuff like that. A lot of these, and I do it myself as a promoter, you look at the artist, the market value of the artist. If I want to buy Kamasi Washington, I know that he's going to sell my festival 2,000 tickets, for example. Mm-hmm. So he will ask a high fee, and I'll probably be willing to pay that higher fee, give or take a negotiation. But if I want the band who won the competition here at the conservatory in Rotterdam to come and play, I'm not going to give them 2,000 euros, because I know that 2,000 euros, I'm not going to sell any tickets off of them. I value the artist, so I do want to pay that. But then it's like a negotiation, and we end up with, I don't know, like 1,000 or 800. And that's not sustainable for them. They can't make a living off of that. And it's a festival in their own hometown as well. Mm-hmm. So that just creates a very, very, strange economy on we pay for, especially in Europe, we pay American artists much more. And we value our own European artists or our local artists much less. And why? Because it's a commercial thing, It's like, how many tickets does he sell? And even though if they sell the same amount of tickets, it's still a matter of the shine from big international artists is much better. So this is one of those elements. But I really think that and I had this talk with a colleague of mine in France, Pascal Pilorget from Giant Steps, an agency in France. I think he's watching as well. Maybe this is also an opportunity to kind of like think very open on the whole business model, the whole business model, the whole commissioning model,
like that's what
the
needs to
whole
happen.
fee model, the whole, and then you get into conversations like ownership. Does the artist have to have ownership? How does that work? Or do I, like an agent / manager, need to like co-promote and co-produce with Bryce, or should Bryce buy it? I don't know. That's maybe up for grabs. It's a good conversation to have.
Yeah. It's up for grabs, and it starts with a baseline of two elements, right? One is what value is somebody creating, whether it's an artist or a manager or a booking agent or a venue, and the other is how can they be compensated for that. It comes, and I think we're going to have to do it largely without government intervention, because this is going to last a lot longer than government intervention is going to be able to last, as far as subsidies and the other possibilities that allow us to like distribute fairly. It has to be a real marketplace. And so that's the question that we're all dealing with. Value creation, getting paid for that value creation, and what does that look like from the flattened landscape that we have.
A little side note to that, Bryce. I mean, I know you guys in the States have been doing that a lot, like not working with subsidies or with sponsors or with funding, just holding up your own pants, basically. Mm-hmm. And, here in Holland, for example, but also in different countries, in different markets here in Europe, a lot of funding for a long time. And then the funding was kind of cut back. So the industry, the cultural sector, was forced to get into that more or less commercial mode of thinking, to keep their own pants up. But the margins are so small, the margins, I mean, For example, New York Winter Jazz is a fantastic festival, but I know that there's not much leverage or much room to pay all those 500 artists their market value money.
700 musicians, 173 different groups this past year.
Yeah,
we pay everyone a minimum fee, and we pay a lot of other artists a higher fee, of course, because of the demand. But it's a tremendous lift financially, and we had about 18,000 bodies come through our doors over 11 days, which is an incredible amount for a jazz event, and actually is New York's largest jazz festival currently. But financially, if you look at it, what my team puts in energy, what I put in, sadly, it's not a financial success. We don't have the sponsorship. We don't have the subsidy. We don't have, outside funding. But we make it work, and it's, in a lot of ways, I see it as a tremendous gift for the community to bring us all together and share positive, progressive messages. We had a whole wellness campaign this year. We've last few years we've aligned with issues of social justice and environmentalism, and we're always trying to figure out ways to show how the music is relevant on stage and off stage. How we all are connected to it, and blur those lines between just performer and audience, and showing ways how we're connected. And I think we can still continue to do that, even though we don't have that communal experience right now, and maybe into the near future. So yeah, again, that's like one of the thoughts or impetuses for starting Jazz Coalition. Bring us all together, bring the stakeholders together, and figure out a way forward.
What do you think about, Bryce? What do you think about associations with brands, and how that can, did that bring in income for your festival at all, or is that, and do you see
not much this year? I mean, we've toyed with different sponsorship opportunities. Of course, we want the philosophy of the brand to align with what we're doing. So certain products we wouldn't want support from, but we're open to all sorts of conversations, of course.
Yeah, my feeling is that's going to be a big thing into the future, and I've thought this for a while as far as artists' income go. But and somebody made a joke once that touring artists are glorified alcohol salesmen, because that's for the up until now you were touring at venues that were selling alcohol, and that was how the venues made the most of their money. But now artists aren't doing that income stream is gone. But I wonder if there's a way for us to somehow form relationships with brands that can finance the creation of things that people want to see created in this new landscape.
I don't know, Greg. I mean, obviously an association with brands and sponsorships is very well, but there's also a flip side to that. It's like the association with brands. Jazz is per definition an independent art form. We don't want branding. We don't want to be associated with fucking McDonald's on the back of our stage or whatever.
Well. Yeah, but
on the other hand,
sorry.
Yeah?
No, you go. I'll let you finish before I interrupt.
Well, no, but on the other hand, I think it's going to be a much broader discussion on how buyers, say promoter, somebody who sells, like the agent or the manager, and the artist who is actually, the thing that you want to present, their art that they want to present. I think it's just going to be a much closer three-way dialogue on how we can present authenticness. People are craving for an authentic experience. Live music is by definition, and it's an authentic experience. And brand association can work. I think that especially if you look to some political developments here in Europe, for example, Spain is going to probably implement the universal basic income. I mean, just imagine that everybody would have a universal basic income in our sector. Would we be bitching right now online, right here, quote unquote? A lot less, I think. You know, I feel that, you know, we need to kind of like come together as a community, you know, and really try and figure out how we're going to do, because you can't expect venues to do the same thing after this whole corona. You know, you can't expect, their venue expenses are going to be through the roof. There's going to be an economic crisis, so people are not going to buy $20 or $30 for a ticket to see their favorite artist.
Well,
and maybe there's going to be a little
sick if they go out.
Well, unless there's a vaccine, and then it doesn't matter who plays or performs.
We're like a year from that at least, though, right?
Ramp, you know? Yeah.
But even if there is a vaccine, it's going to take a long time to disseminate it appropriately across all populations, and sadly, there's going to be inequity in that process, of course.
Yeah. And I really feel, you know, that it's, again, it's a baseline discussion. To what extent can we, as our musicians and the artist community and the jazz community, actually create value for society, which is not just people buying a ticket to see you on the live
All I
side.
can say right now that I want to say, if any artists that are watching, is explore Patreon, you know, explore these other platforms where you can monetize your brilliance, your creativity, your artistry, because there are other where we're all scrambling and being forced to evolve rapidly, or devolve, depending upon how you want to look at it. But you know, we have to change regardless, and you know, there are other, you know, look at Patreon. I see a lot of artists succeeding with Patreon right now. So that's my number one tip.
And there's one aspect in that exact vein that I want to talk about, which is probably not going to be a popular answer, and people probably won't like me for even answering this, but if people should think about education. Like I have a channel where I teach some things about jazz piano online, and it's got 25,000 followers, which is not much, and it's not really monetizable on YouTube, but it's enough to like get some relatively high priced lessons happening, so I can teach them from my like live streaming setup here. And I think a lot of artists who have just been performing artists, they do have a lot of value to give to people who are trying to learn how to be a little tiny fraction of what they are. And I think people are somewhat hesitant to that because there's an ego thing involved, and there's like I'm not an educator, I'm a performer. But there's a lot of value to be tapped into that, especially now that people are in their homes and people are trying to figure out what to do with their time. What?
Not only that, but like
diversification.
But the Zoom technology too enforces the teaching capabilities. I mean, the technology, at least, could you imagine if we're dealing with this pandemic before the internet? I was just thinking that, like, it would just be even more catastrophic.
5% of I think it was 5% of the human population died during the Spanish flu. Like 1 in every 20 people that you know died. And people were confined to their homes and didn't have the ability to even talk with each other, so they didn't even know what to do or how to like.
Right, half the people that died, it was actually due to starvation because they were alone, because they didn't have any way to connect, like you're saying.
But now we are so lucky that we have these technologies, and I'm actually also just going to give a little bit of a personal plug for something to watch out for coming from me, is an app that I can't talk about what it actually does yet, but it's a new way for artists to monetize content that is going to, I think, help change things and give people a new avenue outside of the YouTube and Spotify veins. But then Louis Marks is also working on it with Renew Music and is working on an entire educational arm of that, where he's going to be, well, actually, I can't talk about the specifics of that, but people should try to get involved with that and Renew Music because it'll be affiliated with universities and with different entities that are educating people on how to play music.
Real quick, that's one thing I learned this week. Universities are also facing tremendous drop off because there's fatigue already from this kind of educational experience, using Zoom port and other portals. So there's universities that aren't sure what what their admissions are going to look like next year. You know, and beyond the big universities that are going to lose all this revenue from sports, they're likely going to lose revenue from admissions drop-offs.
Bryce, I've been saying for 15 years now that the academic institutions of the world are bloated bubbles that are going to burst, and I thought it would happen at least 5 years ago. I was wrong, but it's so unsustainable. Think of all the new buildings that have been built in the past 2 years that now, because of this sort of wake-up call that we have, that are now empty, and people have to be doing this from their homes. And then think about all the education that's available to people online, and the ways that people can now connect with each other virtually, where like you don't necessarily need to be in a big lecture hall. It's going to be a massive change in that landscape.
Right, as long as we can keep the audience engaged, the students engaged through this, and you know, we have to be thinking how to keep this experience dynamic, because we're already seeing fatigue. Greg, I think you were just before, if we're ending soon, I wanted to ask, did you, I think you were going to mention it earlier, did you watch the Global Citizen?
I did.
Festival? Yeah, I missed it, but tell us about that.
You know, it was beautiful, and I believe it. I don't know, but I can assume that the reason it was a fundraiser was because there were very high-paid commercials on there that went to the cause of World Health Organization and all of that. It didn't feel like a fundraiser. Nobody was asking for funds. I was sort of expecting to get a text donate link that I would have gladly donated to. But it was a bunch of pop stars basically performing. They had Elton John and I don't remember the other ones, but Elton John was great. And it was also that Oprah talked about. So, but the big thing was, it wasn't about what the world looks like going forward. It was about right now, dealing with the crisis, which is so important that we pay attention now to what we can do to support the healthcare workers that are fighting the virus with people who are actually sick right now. Because this is also something we're going to be dealing with, even if we've gotten through the peak, which we may have, hopefully, or like maybe we're at the peak. The healthcare workers are going to be super taxed and overworked and undersupplied for a long period of time as we're dealing with this. So it's something very important to pay attention to, and I really appreciated the fact that the whole thing was centered around awareness that is where we need to put our attention and money right now as a society.
Nice.
But I think there can be more things like that on an ongoing basis. And Bryce, what you were talking about in terms of the concert series, and pulling in Mike, what you were talking about in terms of a cause, it's like those two things, they do go hand in hand. And the big question is going to be, how do we create income streams for the people who have to change their entire income stream for the next 2 years through these things?
The thing with this period right now is that, you know, everybody has enough time to think about, and especially artists, about like, what am I actually good at? What is my skill beside of, you know, really being good at playing my instrument? You know, you need to think about creating value by, you know, engaging a broader non-music based public. You know, you need to think about like, all right, so a musician is super creative thinkers. They have a very strong work ethic. You know, they're very good in some cases in like communications in certain ways. And how can I actually use that, you know, without going online and teaching the 59th millionth online masterclass, you know, which is of course great, but you know, you need to think about like, what is actually my added value to this, you know, what good can you do? And you know, there's a lot of time to think about audience development, you know, but for me, you know, the whole thing is about meaningful connectivity. There is a time now, again, you know, that the jazz community has to come together and in a meaningful way, you know. Again, Bryce's platform is an example. Another example, you know, what you have here in Holland, and this is way before the whole Corona man, is an example. It's called Sounds of Change, soundsofchange.org. It's a bass player, a Dutch bass player who started this, and basically he stopped music, came together with his friends, built this foundation on giving music therapy and music workshops in refugee camps, and getting funding through corporate workshops and stuff like that. I mean, that's like, all right, you can make a living as a musician, you could live good, you're doing something back for your community, for your music community, but you're also doing something in a broader perspective, propelling music as an art form to move forward. And apart from all the business discussions that we're absolutely going to have, like how is this industry going to look like, as long as we can hold on to like meaningful connectivity and creating meaningful content, we will be pulled apart from the broadness of what's going on right now. I mean, that's the position of art in its true form. So.
Well, and
I think we need to realize that, less selfies, more creative, more thinking collectively in what can you do for society. No, I'm serious.
I know, less selfies, more substance, right?
Fuck yeah.
And Bryce.
No, but that's,
Bryce, I look to you as a tastemaker and entrepreneur in this particular vein that Mike is talking about. I mean, Mike, you too. And I think with the future that you are describing, Bryce, about the live streaming festival from different locations, and then the mentality, Mike, that you have, and how we can attach a message to that. There is a future, and it will eventually be bright for how we can rebuild this industry. And Bryce, I just want to ask if people want to help you do this, how can they? What do you need, and how can people support the vision that you want to build moving forward?
I welcome anyone who's willing to support with ideas and questions and thoughts of a way forward, because there is a lot of unknown, and we're in this together. On a practical sense, they can reach out at jazzcoalition.org and fill out the form. This week, the full site will be launched, and there'll be a membership portal. There'll be a donation portal. There'll just be also a contact form if they want to reach out to us. But yeah, I think as Mike was saying, we all have a lot more time to think about these things and think about strategizing an effective way forward. So there's a lot of time for new conversations, and I certainly welcome that. The silver lining from this all is that we are rethinking, restructuring. As Governor Cuomo said a couple weeks ago, when his daughter asked if when it's going to be back to normal. Well, there isn't going to be normal. There's going to be a new normal. There's going to be a new way where we're going to learn how to survive together. So yeah, on that note, let's all come together and figure that out together.
Great.
Do it.
Yeah, thank you.
Maybe we should do this like every 2 weeks or something.
Hey, I'm down. Get a few more people on the panel. It's
not like I'm going anywhere. Like I need to be at concerts and stuff like that.
Yeah. Well.
And bring in some different perspectives. Let's bring in some women.
Yeah.
Let's bring in.
We almost have
share those different perspectives.
This was thrown together last second. So anybody tuning in. So yes.
Yeah, we'll do this again. Well, thank you, and thank you, Simon Rentner and Mike Bindraban and Bryce Rosenblum.
Thank you, Greg.
This was an enlightening conversation, and I look forward to keeping in touch and figuring out this path forward. And anybody who's listening, we're all accessible people online, and we all are interested in getting ideas and perspectives, and we'll figure out this path forward together.
Building a coalition.
Building what?
We all need to be building a coalition.
Yes.
We need to just come together. Everybody, this is a call to action for people to creatively come together, and look at this as an ecosystem. Then
Yeah.
All right.
Stay healthy and strong, everyone.
Thank you.
Yes, stay in touch.
All right. Thanks, guys. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye, everyone. Thanks for watching.
Peace.
Well, That was an incredible conversation with Bryce Rosenblum, Mike Bindraban, and Simon Rentner. For those of you who tuned in the last bit of this, Bryce, he's the founder of Winter Jazz Festival. I don't actually know what jazz festivals are in terms of scope, but it is gigantic. He had 18,000 people through the door this past year. It's going to be transformed this coming year, and he's working on ways to support artists and rebuild the gigging economy in a way that is sustainable for the future, utilizing the tools that we have at our disposal now. Mike Bindraban is an international touring booking agent, Good Music Company, and another entity and another person who is figuring out how we're going to move forward here. And then Simon Rentner, a radio personality and friend of mine, who hosts a show on WBGO called The Checkout, which you should check out. Just to recap a little bit on the resources, there's jazzcoalition.org, which I put in the restream here. If you're watching through any of my personal pages, and or the YouTube channel, and then there's a host of others. In fact, I'll aggregate them and put them in the comments below here, or in the description of this video, because this video is going to live online if you want to rewatch it. And reach out to me if you have ideas. If you have ideas of people that you want to have on this show in the future, and who knows, we might even be getting this panel together on a regular basis with some other people involved. I think it would be really, like, the main thing that we need to do right now is come together and think of the creative solutions for the future, to rebuild the landscape that has been to re-sew the rug that has been so gracefully ripped out from under our feet as an artist community and as a world economy, essentially. So we're not alone in this. So I do this every morning also. I usually play a little bit of piano. Today I didn't really. I am now, but today was specifically for discussion, and I feel very lucky to have those guys join me. But tomorrow morning I'll be back. Tomorrow morning I'll be speaking with Michael League, the founder of Snarky Puppy. We're going to have a fun conversation. I might be able to get him to play his, I can't remember what it's called, but it's some cool, I think, African-based bass instrument that he's been practicing while he's in quarantine. And tune back every morning. Come hang out with me at 8 a.m. Until tomorrow morning, stay safe, stay healthy, and catch you guys soon. Peace. Bye.